Storm work out the technology here, but just as a manner of introduction, so Storm is the language director and master teacher for the Kansei Nikashinga, which I probably
No,
didn't
that's
say.
good. Not as good. That was good.
Was that good?
Yes.
For the Ka people. Okay, that's thank you. Miss Brave's great-grandmother was the late Maud Rowe, who was the last fluent speaker of the Kansei Nikashinga. Miss Brave is a Native American actress, and I love to tell people this, I can tell you, but she's a Native American actress and portrayed Bertha Bighart in the Martin Scorsese film Killers of the Flowers. Oh,
Oh, we're gonna get to that in just a second.
she's been studying Kansei EA, is that right? Since she was 5 years old, and prays that someday, with constant dedication, to build the most successful language department in her tribe's history. And I will say, it's been fascinating to learn that she's able to go into the public schools closest to where she lives and teach called language lessons in the public schools. I'm like, yay, public schools.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's welcome Storm Brave.
Hawaii, Gonze Jaje Wita Che Miombami, Gonze Bli, Gonze Ie Taposkapli, Gonze Ina Abba Jaje Ita Che Little Carol Park, Gonze Punkashi Wajaje Ida Je Jaje Ita Che David Anthony Brave, Gonze Ie Oakikie, Taposkapli, Kasirita ma oali shonshoe, Hombayi angachimbe mira shewewika. My name is Desiree Storm Brave. I am Ka, Gonze, Wajaji, Osage, Wahioha, Potawatomi, and Cherokee. So I have 4 different tribes. I'm enrolled to the Gonze tribe. We're located in Ka City, Oklahoma. Earlier, Dr. Anderson, he shared what our original reservation and territory was and how large it was. In my presentation, I will show you today how small it is presently. My slideshow isn't as decked out as his, but I just have some pictures to keep me on track because I like to jump into all these rabbit holes. So I guess I could say I am a Native American actress, but I think an advantage that I have in where I grew up with my Gonze people, our neighbors and our big brother tribe is the Wajaji, the Osage. A fun fact about that, the Gonze Nikashinga and the Wajaji, the Osage, also the Ogahpa, the Quapaw, the Banka, or Ponca tribe, and the Omaha, were all one big tribe in those times that Dr. Anderson was going over. We referred to ourselves as the Yagaha Nikashinga. Today, a more modern term, you will find a Degiha Nikashinga. But at one time, those 5 tribes were very strong, and we were all one group, one large tribe. This is a time in like Dr. Anderson said, these is our delegates, our Gonze people. This would have been a time before encroachment of settlers, and this is the time that we were still hunting buffalo and doing our passing our peace pipe before we got into our battles with the Cheyenne, the Pawnee, the Bani Nikashinga. Amongst our Gonze people, we still joke about it today, but we always refer to the Pawnee as our favorite foes. We always knew the Pawnee tribe, they were very good at stealing our horses, and the Wajaji, the Osage's horses, and we would always be in battle with those guys. They also, during like the Civil War times, a lot of them were scouts, and we referred to them as the Republican Pawnees because they would side with the Americans. And back in those times, Redskin or Scalp or something, Indian, as deceased, their body was worth money, and those scouts were always reporting back to the cavalry, the Mahitanga, where we were, what we were doing, things like that. So we also, you know, it was different. We went to war in a different way. We always, before we went to war with these tribes, we sat down and we smoked our peace pipe with them, and we kind of discussed and had a ceremony before we went to battle that next day. We just had different ways of thinking and going about stuff like battle. This is an older map. It's kind of blurry. It was literally a map. I took a picture with my phone. This is a map of Kansas. You guys probably knew that. This is Salina right here. And all of these blue dots, this is where our last villages were here in Kansas. We have the Fanning Creek Village, Hard Chiefs Village. Blue Earth was our next to last village. It was more by Topeka. Wajitano. And this blue dot here is Council Grove, and this is where the village was. This is where the 1825 treaty was signed. We have Wauconda Springs, like Dr. Anderson had mentioned earlier, was also a sacred and special spot for our Gonze people as well. And I think up there is a Pawnee Indian village. Something interesting about the Blue Earth Village is, you know, people were always kind of thinking that, well, was it blue? Was it, you know, why was it called that? And we called the Kansas River the Big Blue River. And we also, I heard that there was copper, and our Gonze people wore a lot of copper jewelry. You'll notice I have a short film that we were able to make with our youth, and their whole ears are just lined with earrings. And we also had bracelets and necklaces. And sometimes when we have to identify our ancestors with our NAGPRA program, we can still find that there's like a green tinge like around their bones and stuff, just because we never took our jewelry off and we wore it all the time. This is a, these are actually Sac and Fox Nikashinga on this side, and this is Gonze Nikashinga. This is one of our more known chiefs. His name is Alinkawaho. Today there's a park in Council Grove, Kansas, that's called the Alinkawaho Park. That's a small acreage of land that our Gonze tribe has been able to buy back from Kansas, and we have it in trust. There is also the resting place for our Injuje Wahobe, our big red rock that we recently repatriated in Council Grove at that park. It was part of our history and our religion. We have a song chart, and along that song chart we have characters, and there's lines in front of those characters. Might be 3 lines, this one might have 5 lines, but those lines represent how many songs went along with that character on that song chart. And around there you get to the top, and that is, you will see Injuje Wahobe, that rock, and the songs that went along with it. I believe in 1924, the rock was taken from a creek bank where the Shunganunga and the Kansas River kind of meet, and the rock was stuck there. It was very important to our Gonze people because we would relate our lives and our characteristics to that rock because of the strength that it had and the way that it got here. It's actually a Sioux and quartzite, and those rocks only exist in like North Dakota. And so through the Ice Age and hundreds, thousands of years ago, as that melted, it pushed that rock, a glacier pushed the rock all the way to our people. And so that made it very sacred to us, and we guarded that rock, and other tribes were aware of its location, so they were also able to use the rock in different ways. But that's a cool landmark, and Kansas is filled with Native American history and special places to visit. I wish my state, my tribe has been relocated to in Oklahoma. I wish they were more like that, but you guys really do take a lot of pride in your history and preserving things that are special. I guess I kind of forgot a little piece, but she kind of informed you that I'm the language teacher for my tribe. I'm also the language director, and I'm an elected official on our tribal council. And with all of that, I oversee a lot of our youth and our programs. And at the end of my presentation, we were able to make a short film about our removal from Kansas. And we have entered that short film into a competition that happens in Oklahoma on the first Monday and Tuesday of April. There are 38 federally recognized tribes in Oklahoma, Indian Territory, and all of us come together at that time and we just battle it out in our languages, and who is more fluent, who has the most creative ideas. And it's really cool to be there with all of us at one this strength, and it's very powerful to watch our youth speak. We went through a lot of genocide and trauma to erase who we are and our languages, our religions, our culture, things like that. We work really hard today to build that back and strengthen it so that we have it for the next generation. And in that short film, you'll see this picture, I believe, and it was really nice producing that film, because there's 26 youth on that team that's going to compete, and they're all doing different skits, but the short film, that's my most favorite. And we were able to have call on our moccasin makers in our tribe. They were able to make their leggings and their breechcloth moccasins. My little brother, his name is Dewey Donaldson, and he's actually one of our other speakers. We grew up together and learned how to speak Gonze. And he made otter hide caps. Like these caps are made of otter, and that's just a teaching that not a lot of people know how to do that, and so we're lucky to have someone to know how to do that. He's 28 years old, and he was taught by our grandpa how to do that, and so he hasn't done that in a long time. And a lot of our makers amongst our tribe, they hadn't opened up that craft box in years, and so being able to create something again and give it to our youth and see it be used again, it's really a healing journey for our tribe. This is another picture that will be in our short film that I'll show at the end. This is, Kansas, there was a time that there was a really bad flood. Rain and rain and rain, and within those treaties, our land, it started out really big, the whole state. We would make our villages in the east, and we would hunt buffalo in the west. And at this time, our territory had gotten really small, and we're actually in Council Grove or around there, and we're living like refugees, homeless people. At that time, our crops had been flooded out, and we were very hungry. And so, as this compared to the first slide, where we have the otter hide caps, the necklaces, the peace medals and everything, these guys are almost bare. They're just in their shirts, and they're and so we have this scene in our film too. I think it's an important part of our history. While teaching our youth language, we're also able to teach them our history. For instance, the American history that's taught in public schools, it is part of our history as American citizens, but our grandfathers were not doing the same thing that a lot of other grandfathers were doing at the time of the Civil War. We were preparing for, our future. We were trying to survive. And so I think it's important that as we learn our language, that we also learn our history, our true history. We've studied boarding schools. We're starting to study the treaties that landed us where we are today. There is a website that K-State has been working on, and all you have to do is type in Kansas treaties, and it has all the treaties that the Kaw tribe has signed, and we're gonna start looking into that over the summer and start working with our kids to, you know, be more aware of that. And I think it's also important because treaties are a signed document and agreement we have with the United States government, so at the end of the day, those will hopefully protect us against certain things and endeavors that we have to go through in the future. This is boys from the Kaw Mission. You'll also see this in our short film I will show. These boys, they have their bows and arrows. There's a what they call a pageant or something. It's a play in Council Grove, Kansas called the Voices of the Wind Pageant. The whole community comes together to celebrate the removal of our Gonze people in a way. And they always invite our Gonze people to this pageant. They pay us $100 and we cry like our ancestors did when we left the town. These boys were also, and the actors in that play admit to this and state that these boys, you know, the Kaw Mission was also an agricultural school. And so some of these boys, or all of them, were actually being used by the farmers to till their land and haul hay and do stuff like from sunup to sundown. And it was really hard work, and that's portrayed in our short film as well. This was an interesting picture I have come across. This says that this is in Salina, Kansas, and that these are Gonze Indians. Just looking at it for myself and with some other culture advisors I have, this is not a Gonze cradle board, and the Y at the top, ours is just straight and rectangular. But I can't confirm or not confirm that these are Gonze people unless I could, you know, time travel. But I just thought that was really interesting. I keep trying to find more information or where this came from, but I haven't had any luck.
So I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the Kaw people, I see teepees there.
Mhm.
That wouldn't have been your typical like permanent housing, but were they used on the hunt?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think Salina, Kansas, even with the treaties in 1940s or 1840s, there was one of them that ceded a lot of our hunting grounds, and I believe that Salina was an area that we came to hunt. And so, I mean, they could be Gonze Nikashinga, but yes, I did notice the teepees in the back. And our Gonze people dwelled in earth lodges. We have different ways of breaking up our tribe. We have 16 different clans, and within those clans, they break up into different groups of people too. And our camping circle would have been, you know, 10 or so earth lodges in a circle with an opening at the east. And it even breaks up further than the 16 groups. It goes to the Wabahanke, or our 7 bands. And in our ways of thinking, and I guess our religion, the Gonze people believe that we originated in the stars. And just like the Pawnee, like Dr. Anderson had mentioned, we have a lot of knowledge about astrology. And so we believe that these 7 bands of Gonze people, when we leave this earth, that we go back to that star where our families originated. And yeah, so as you get more into our tribe, it breaks down and it gets a little bit more complex to relate back to, but it's definitely interesting. So this is a picture of President Herbert Hoover and Vice President Charles Curtis. I always like to mention this because it's, you know, we're still proud of him, but a lot of the things that Vice President Charles Curtis did, he was kind of unaware of the effects it would have on all Native people, and especially his Gonze people back after our removal. The area we were removed from Kansas to Indian Territory is called Washunga, Oklahoma. And Vice President Charles Curtis, he did the Allotment Act and was also signed the Dawes Act, and both of those had a rippling effect across Indian country. It turned our reservation, where all of us as a whole tribe shared everything. We shared the hunting grounds, and we still sent our young boys out to hunt, and they shared everything. But once it broke it up into, I think they were 20 acre parcels, but it looks like this. This is our map, but I did this art on this map. This was after the Allotment Act, each of these squares is a different family, and our reservation was broken up into these little allotments. That to us is mind-boggling. What do you mean this is our land? What do you mean this isn't everybody's land? And so that kind of broke up our ways of thinking. We would have grandmas from the same family way down here, and they'd make sure to put the rest of that family way up here. And it was just the beginning of the dissolvement of our Gonze people. Something that's not as depressing is that, oh gosh, where did that go? Where did that? Okay, talking about Charles Curtis, a lot of people don't know, but I see a lot of books that are coming out. I see one that has newly came out, and it's by Deborah Goodrich, and she's a citizen here of Kansas and has studied Charles Curtis. But he's originally from Topeka, Kansas. Before he was made to go to boarding school at age 12 and removed from his grandma's teepee in Topeka, he was one of our well-known horsemen. He was actually training, we raced horses a lot, and he was training to be a jockey. He was taken at 12 years old from Topeka and put into boarding schools, and then groomed to go into law school, and then landed himself in the White House. An interesting fact about Topeka, Kansas is it's actually a Gonze word. The word dough is the word for potato, B is a word for good, and ga is to dig. And so that to us is a good place to dig for potatoes. One of our traditional foods for our Gonze people is the prairie potato, which are potatoes that are like this big, and I guess that was a good place to dig them up. I haven't tried yet, but that's where Vice President Charles Curtis and kind of the effects of his time in office. He actually came back to Washunga after signing the Allotment Act and was at our Indian agency. And the time in Washunga, it was very hard for our people. We were actually, a lot of us starved to death, and the rations and things that we were promised and we bought from the U.S. government from the lands that were ceded in Kansas, they never came through. And so a story I have is this Gonze Gahike, this chief, this is Washunga, or that's how it's pronounced more in English or today. His way we say his name in Gonze is Wajongie. And Wajongie, he made the walk from Council Grove, Kansas to Washunga, Oklahoma, the town that's named after him, and our tribal town. He was very sad, but he was a very exceptional man. He took in a lot of orphans. After we got there, a lot of our people started to, get really sick, and we were starving to death. One of the things is our first female chief, Washunga's predecessor, his daughter, adopted daughter, Lucy Tai Eads, and her brother Emmett Eads. They were 4 and 3 years old at the time that their parents passed away in Washunga, Oklahoma. And Wajongie took them in and raised them. And Lucy became our first female chief in 1925. And I think that's really important. His honor hide cap, you will see one of the boys that are wearing that in our short film as well. This is Alinkawaho. That's who the park in Council Grove is named after. If you're familiar with Council Grove, Kansas, you know that their celebration in June called Washunga Days is named after this Chief Washunga. And I remember our council asking, why did you guys choose Washunga? And they said, well, that's the easiest one to pronounce. I was like, well, you're probably right. Washunga, he actually, everybody dies, but he died in Washunga, Oklahoma. He froze to death. He was going to one of our clan leaders of the Ibache clan, the Lights the Pipes clan, and he went to his friend Rufus Test's house. That was that clan leader's name. And there was a blizzard that night. And a lot of what our people suffered from as they got to Washunga after being removed is alcoholism, depression, sickness, and things like that. Washunga was an alcoholic. And that night of that blizzard, or it was a couple days long of the blizzard, and he came, and his wagon broke down there at his friend's house outside the gates. And Washunga at that time, he had been through a lot. He had watched, he made that 17-day walk in winter from Council Grove to where we were going in Oklahoma, northern central Oklahoma. He watched the Allotment Act and the effects that it had on his people. He watched people starve to death. I'm not giving him excuses for his ailment, but he froze to death. He just sat down beside his wagon wheel and sat there and died. I always thought that was like, really, really sad. But, and then I'm like, why did you name that whole weekend celebration over that? Do you know what happened to him? It's kind of sad. There's the mural of Washunga in Council Grove, Kansas. And I went to Council Grove, Kansas back in February. I taught 3 local schools there, and I did a presentation at the Kansas Historical Society there, and I spoke about Washunga and this celebration, and I think it's just, it's kind of odd that the town, they make a lot of profit off of this name and our tribe, and really the removal of our people. And the removal, it still has its effects on different generations today amongst our tribe, and it's just really weird for me.